Gira Boisai, let's do it. Hatmana. Geschmack. Giving a share to the Chash V'Kail. The Reishi Kail. Geschmack. Okay, so let's do this. Hatmana on Shabbos. What's the deal? Is it one of the Lamites Malachas? No, it's not. What is it? It's an issur d'Rabbanan. What is Hatmana? It's insulating. We'll get into the details in a second. But there's an issur on Shabbos to insulate, to keep, what's the definition of the Malacha? It's completely insulating, simply speaking, a container of hot food with a material that keeps in the heat. Right? So insulating a container of hot food with a material that maintains the heat. Now, why is there going to be an issur? So Rashi explains the reason is because, when you want to keep your food hot and geschmack for the Shabbos meal, so, you get into it. And when you're going to get into it, you're going to be bold. You're going to be, get caught up in it. You get caught up in making sure hot food is important. Hot food is geschmack. It's not just gashmis. It's Shabbos Kodesh. Only Shabbos. It's important. So when you're going to go and start making sure that food is hot and you're going to get carried away, before you know, you're going to take the coals, put it around, you're going to be stoking the coals. You could end up with bishul, you can end up with mavir, you can end up with all sorts of malachas, because you're going to be bold, you're going to get carried away with keeping it warm. So we know what Chazal say, take 4 steps back, not just 3, take 4 steps back, and you know what? It's not time to keep that, to do the hatmana, to keep the food warm, because you start off keeping the food warm, and you never know, will you end up getting carried away. Fine. So there's, a very classic example of what hatmana is. We're talking about standard hatmana she'ein moisiv hevel, first example. You got the chicken soup, right? Did you put it on a block this week? No, because, it's hot. It's 80, 90 degrees, 37 degrees outside. So that's Celsius for, you guys get it. Okay, so it's nice and hot outside. You don't want to keep your plata on. You don't want to keep your block. Plata is the electric hot plate. You don't want to keep on the electric hot plate, the plata. You don't want to keep on the block. Shut it off, and you have the soup there. And you're like, oh, yeah, I forgot. They're doing kalbach. They're having a kalbach Kabbalah Shabbos. It's going to be long. By the time I turn around, the chicken soup's going to be warm. I got an idea. I'll take a towel. I'll take a blanket. I'll cover the chicken soup, and I'll keep it warm for the meal. Is one allowed to do that? If they can, I'm talking about on Shabbos right now. They realize it's Kabbalah Shabbos already. They realized, oh yeah, I forgot about the Kalba Kabbalah Shabbos. So could they go and now cover it? No, they cannot go and cover it because that is hatmana. That is completely insulating that chicken soup pot, and that is a problem. Now, there's also another type of halachas, and by the way, these halachas apply even if the chicken soup is fully cooked, even if it's what Chazal call mistamik viraloi, which means that additional cooking will have a negative effect on the food. We're still chayshish that you might come to cook it when you get carried away, because hot food is important for Yidden on Shabbos, and you get carried away with this type of stuff. So you never know. You'll start off with a little hatmana. You never know where you end up, even when it's mistamik virali, even when additional cooking will be negative for the food. Okay, there's a second type of hatmana, which is what we call hatmana shemoisif hevel. It's a hatmana where you go and you stick the item into somewhere where it actually gets hotter. So what are you going to do? You have your pot. You want to make sure it's going to stay hot. You put it in some lime, in some salt, in some fertilizer, right? Everybody would do that, I think. Yeah, you put it in, wrap it up, and keep it geschmack and warm. And if you do that, it's a problem even before Shabbos. So even before Shabbos and Erev Shabbos, you're not allowed to stick your pot in salt, in lime, and all these types of things that will cause it to increase its heat. That's a problem even on Erev Shabbos. Really? What's going on? Am I allowed to light a fire before Shabbos and keep it on over Shabbos? Yeah. Am I allowed to do most malachas start off before Shabbos and it keeps on going by itself without my activity on Shabbos? Yeah. So this is very strange that this is the Rabbanon, the way is being more chomer than all these issur d'oraisa, which we allow you sometimes. Sometimes when things make a lot of noise, maybe we don't let you do it. But in general, we let you do things before Shabbos, even if they continue into Shabbos. But once again, over here, what's our concern? Our concern is that you're going to get carried away. You're going to get carried away in making sure your food's hot. we're not worried about the mice of the action the second that you do it. We're worried about the continuation time. Oh, maybe it's not so hot, maybe it's not hot enough, and then you'll act. So if our concern is about your ongoing future act, therefore it's going to be a problem even when you started before Shabbos, because it's not about when you started. Okay, fine. Weiter. Now, that is what we call Hatmana Shemoisif Hevel. And that's us or even on Erev Shabbos. But L'maisel, Chevra, anybody here ever put their chicken soup in fertilizer? I don't think so. And we don't even do salt, right? So, and in the Ge'eh B'zman Hazeh? Unfortunately, wrong answer. It is Nege'eh B'zman Hazeh. The place say it's really in the Shulchan Aruch already, that if you have a heat source under the pot, and then you cover the pot, that will be Hatmana Shemoisif Hevel. What happens? You have the heat, let's say you put the chicken soup on the plata, and then you completely cover it with a towel or a blanket. Hopefully you don't start a fire, but that's not for today. You're not worried about fires. So you go and you stick the blanket or the towel on top of the chicken soup. You completely surround it. And now the heat goes through the soup into the towel, and now that towel is keeping that extra heat on that pot, and that is now Hatmana Shemoisif Hevel. So to go and completely cover that chicken soup or that crock pot or whatever, we're going to discuss all the examples coming up, that would be a problem of Hatmana Shemoisif Hevel. There's usher even on Erev Shabbos. And I'll tell you something, guys, a lot of people don't know this. And a lot of people are very certain like this. You're not even allowed to do that on Erev Shabbos. We'll speak many examples coming up. Fine. Now, let's discuss some of the hetterim, and we'll throw it all out there. We'll get a little equal. And once we know almost all the hetterim, we go through lots of examples and play it out and see some interesting lumdis and interesting halacha. Let's do this, boys. All right. Now, if it isn't completely wrapped, right, it's only partially wrapped, so that will not be, as long as there's a significant amount exposed, that will not be considered hatmana, certainly for Ashkenazim, Sfardim, Bnei Brakers, maybe we'll discuss a little bit later, but simple pshat, if it's not completely insulated, but it's actually a significant part of it is exposed, it is not called hatmana. Now, it is only hatmana if the insulator is touching the pot. If the insulator is not touching the pot, it's just, let's say, hot air or something like that, that will not be called hatmana. Heter number 3. One is allowed to re-insulate a previously heated pot, insulated pot. So if you had a pot that was insulated, you took off the hatmana item, the towel, the blanket, whatever, you're allowed to put it back on.
Only as much as it was on at the beginning.
Actually, once again, we're talking about a thing that was completely insulated before, and you're allowed to put it back, and the place would say you could even add a layer. Surprisingly. Yes. Next halacha. This is not necessarily true at every scenario according to everyone, but the basic halacha is you're allowed to insulate a kli sheni. So once it's a kli sheni, you're going to be good. That's the 4th heter. The 5th heter is if the food has cooled below Yatzalez by, oh no! They were at the Kabach Kabbalah Shabbos. The food, it's not even Yatzles, but it's under 110 degrees Fahrenheit by now. It's not even, it's 42-ish, I don't know, whatever it is. It's not Yatzles, but anymore. Now I want to cover it. You're allowed to do that, but Malcolm Sark, that would be allowed. Happens to be the Chazon Ish says it's even completely lechatchila. The mice, if you're doing it, it's probably Malcolm Sark. Fine.
Why are you concerned about it being a bishul issue now?
Because once again, we're talking about something that when you go and cover, once again, we're usually talking about on Shabbos right now. If we're talking about on Shabbos, then we're talking about Hatmana She'ena Moisef Hevel. If it's Hatmana She'ena Moisef Hevel, you're just keeping the heat in, you're not going to raise the temperature and you're not going to run into any bishul shaylas. I'm just science, right? Okay, fine. Next. So, next heter is, it's not so practical as heter, but 6th heter is during Ben Hashmashis. During Ben Hashmashis, one is allowed to do hatmana. Once again, we're talking about it in the Einay Moisef Hevel, not adding heat version. You're allowed to do it during Ben Hashmashis, as long as you weren't Makabel Shabbos. The problem is, When it comes to Shmashis, you're meant to have been Makabel Shabbos. So in a normal scenario, this isn't practical. But when is this practical? That Shabbos, that Erev Shabbos, that everything goes wrong, and that's also why you're busy insulating the pot after Shkia, because everything already went wrong. And yes, you're supposed to have been Makabel Shabbos, but you didn't. So on that Shabbos, you remember what I'm talking about? Remember that one time? So that time, you would be able to do the Hatmana even after Shkia during Ben Shmashos. Okay, next, the seventh one. The Shulchan Aruch says this, and if you wrap the item to protect it, you do Hatmana, but you're not doing Hatmana to keep the heat in. You're doing Hatmana with a different kavana. You're doing Hatmana because you want to keep the dirt out of the pot. You want to keep the mice away from the pot. But you're wrapping it with a towel and a blanket. That would be allowed. This is a chiddush. When do we ever see this? That, you have a different kavana, therefore the issur is around. I'm not doing this issur for this reason. I'm doing this issur for a different reason, and now it's mutter. That's not usually how it works. We usually have I'm not doing hagasa on the pot because I wanted to heat it up. I'm doing it because I want to scoop out food. No, we don't allow you to do that. It's interesting why all of a sudden we're playing kavana. But once again, the whole chashash was, if you're so focused on your food, on keeping it warm, you know what you're going to come to? You're going to come to cooking and all that type of stuff. I'm not focused on keeping my food warm. I'm focused on keeping the rats out. And if I'm focused on keeping the rats out, it's never going to bring me to bishul, and that's why we're going to allow it when your focus is different. But it still is a chiddush, but it's a chiddush we could understand. Okay, so let's get practical with some geschmack examples, and we'll get some clarity. What do we think about? How about a thermos? You guys know a thermos, good old man. He has his hot water. He wants to keep it hot in the thermos. Or let's say you're somewhere, your neighbor has hot water. You didn't put up an urn this week. You don't want to go knock on their door every time you want a little coffee. So you fill up your thermos. It keeps the water hot. Keep the water hot from the night till the next morning. Maybe not the same degree of hot, but keep it over Yatzlez until the next morning. Are you allowed to use a thermos on Shabbos? What do you think? Yes, no? Yes. Okay, we're having yes. Why? What's the heter? What's the reason?
It's not two layers. It's one. I think it's like.
So good. So very good. So Gila nailed both of the reasons to be mater. So let's just speak about the lumdus for a second. The kli sheni, that's the first heter that comes to mind, because you don't cook the water in the thermos. You go from the urn, which is the kli rishon, and you fill up the thermos, which is a kli sheni. Now, why is a kli sheni allowed? What's the pshat? It's a Mefresh Gemara that a kli sheni is allowed. However, we have a machlokes rishonim how to explain this. There is the Shittas Rambam that l'maisa kli sheni isn't so hot. And once a kli sheni isn't so hot, then Meila, there's no issur of Hatmana on it. It's out of the parsha of the whole Hatmana thing. It's not so hot, a kli sheni. Rashi says, once you're putting the water, or the whatever it is, into a kli sheni, that shows that your kavana is that you're not looking for it to be hot anymore. And since it shows that your kavana is that you're not looking for it to be hot anymore, Memela, a kli sheni is allowed. That's how Rashi understands the Gemara. What's the nafkamina between the Rambam and Rashi? Thermos. Is it a kli sheni? Yes. The Rambam says kli sheni, mutter. What does Rashi say? The whole thing is it's megala your kavana. By a thermos, it's megala your kavana the opposite. The whole concept of a thermos is I want to keep the water hot. So there's not megala your kavana that you don't want it hot. No, I want it hot. I just have to move it to a different place. But I want it hot. And therefore, the Shitas Rashi, a thermos wouldn't have the heter of kli sheni. L'maisa, the Ikar Psak is like the Rambam. The Shevet Levi goes like Rashi. And the Shevet Levi asers a thermos. He says you're not allowed to use a thermos. Ramosha says a yer shemayim should be choishish for Shitas Rashi. He's masking that the Ikar Psak is like the Rambam, that any kli sheni is allowed, but a yer shemayim should be choishish for Shitas Rashi. However, Ramosha says, but a thermos is still mutter anyways, for a different reason. When you fill up the thermos, is it completely covered, before you put the cap on, is it completely insulated with no cap? No, not insulated. And then when you go to put the cap on, you didn't do a Maisa Hatmana. Every Kli, you're allowed to put a cap on a Kli. You're putting a cap on for all sorts of reasons. That things don't spill out, that no bugs go in, etc. There's all sorts of reasons to put a cap on. So when you fill it up,
It's like a pot, a lid on a pot.
it's like a lid on a pot. That's not Hatmana. So when you're filling it up, it's not insulated. And then when you go and you cover it, you didn't do a Ma'aseh Hatmana, and Memela, Ramosha says it's allowed. Now I could have argued with the Ramosha and say it's one process. You put it in the thermos and you cover the lid, it's one process. But Ramosha split it up into two processes, and Memela said, even though he generally held that Yer Shemaim should be Choshish for Shitas Rashi, but Lemaisa there's very little practical difference. Fine. Now, fine. The Chazanish and Rav Folk, they say it's mutter for a separate reason, which Gilan alluded to as well, which is that there's no such thing as Hatmana in the initial container. Hatmana, by definition, is insulating the container, but if it is the container, if it is the Kli that is holding the item, it's not called Hatmana. But once again, we can see Rav Moshe Feinstein clearly didn't hold, and Shevet Levi also didn't hold of this heter, but the Chazanish and Rav Folk held of this concept.
Are they arguing about the mitzvahs of the thermos?
No. They don't in general take on that as an automatic heter. Fine. You guys remember in Bubby's house? Close. We're gonna get the hot water bottle soon from Bubby's house. We're gonna get that's on deck. Remember Bubby's urn? How it had that material, like they call a sweater or a jacket around the urn. That material covering just the place of the tap was revealed, but everything else was covered by material in Bubby's house. No, not just my Bubby. Okay, it's in lots of Bubby's houses. Because Zaidi liked the boiling hot tea that was 3,000 degrees because he had no more nerves left in his mouth. No? Okay, fine. Okay, you remember? Okay, we have somebody here who remembers how Bubby's house made the... Good. Okay, very good. So that's how it was in Bubby's house. If you know, you know. So the old European... So they have these like perfectly fitted things around the urn, this material, and it's meant to keep the urn boiling hot. It doesn't cool off easily because it has this material keeping the heat in. So is one allowed to use that on Shabbos? Now, I put it on before Shabbos. Okay, you put it on before Shabbos. But surely that's Hatmana on Mosif Hevel, because you have a heating element inside the urn, which is boiling up that water, and this cover on top of the urn is keeping the heat in. L'chayra, that should be a problem. Now, the Maisa, the Shevet Levi has a heter here, which is very difficult to understand. The Shevet Levi says it's allowed because it's going to heat up anyways, the water. And if it cools down, it's going to get reheated up as well. What's the purpose of this cover? Is to save electricity, that it doesn't cool down quickly. It's not to keep it hot, because it's going to be hot anyways. It's just a varden saving electricity, and if it's a varden saving electricity, Mimela, it's allowed. Now, I think it's hard to swallow, because the mice, it's mitzias, it's keeping the heat in. And number two is, it's because Zaidi likes that boiling hot tea. You know, it keeps the tea most of the time very hot. And therefore, it's I don't really hear the Shevet Levi so much. Rav Scheinberg has a heter. He says that if you always keep it on the urn, it's not like you put it on for Shabbos. You know, it always lives on the urn. Then it's considered one kli. It's not considered two separate items. That's the urn sweater mechanism. And Mamela, that I hear the argument, I can hear both ways, even though you could take it off. But if you don't take it off, it's batal, it's one item, and therefore it wouldn't be hat mana. L'maisa, one should not rely on this and should not use this unless you pull it up a little bit to reveal. But it's not worth getting in a fight with the shviger or your wife's bubby over this.
Maybe it is mistaken because the whole thing is you're going to become bohol if you're not going to have water. You are going to have hot water here, even if you don't have the zachman. It will take another 4 seconds. There's no chashash.
No, I see this. Listen, Zaidi needs the boiling hot tea. Now. It's not now. Zaidi's not waiting. You might press that button. I don't buy it. I think there's just as much of a chashash as any other case. Okay, fine. Now, Now back to once we're hanging out in Bubby's house. So what about the hot water? The hot water bottle. Well, for those that don't remember what I'm talking about, remember when you had a bellyache and Bubby gave you the hot water bottle, the rubber thing. Sometimes it has a little material on the outside for the bellyache. You know, it's one of those guys, right? Are you allowed to fill that up on Shabbos? So once again, you could fill that up because it's a klisheni. And once again, we're probably going to, and the heter of Moshe as well, l'chayr works. You fill it up. It's at that point there's no hatmana because it's open on the top. The heat is going to escape. And when you close it, you're closing it so you don't burn yourself. So it's not closing it to keep in the heat. It's closing it so you don't burn yourself. I mean, as well maybe keeps in the heat, but you definitely will need it closed not to burn yourself. And Mimela, that should be fine. The question is, and the people in America are going to be a little surprised in this, but a lot of people in Eretz Yisrael, so they put it in their bed. Why do they put it in their bed? Because they don't want to warm up the whole house and to spend the heating bill on warming up the whole house, but they want a warm gishmak of bed. So I guess in Eretz Yisrael they have these big huge houses, so they don't want to heat up the whole house. In America it's not a problem. You just have a little small place. You warm up. I guess so. That must be pshat. So in Eretz Yisrael they a lot of times people put them in their beds and keep it warm. Are you allowed to take this water bottle? And now, once again, you're taking that kli and you're sticking it in the bed, and now you're covering it. So now you're keeping the heat in the water bottle. Is that allowed? So once again, if you're going to rely on the kli sheni, then you're okay. If you're going to rely on the chazanish and the chazanish, that actually no, sorry, take that back. The chazanish isn't going to help you. Its actual kli is fine, but what about when you put it under the bed? The covers, right? You're covering it with the covers. Sorry, take it back. You don't have the chazanish, but you have the kli sheni. Chazanish and Rafalk is that there's no hatmana with one kli. So what I was saying is not so pashut actually. I take that back. But you have. But what if you're machmir for the Shevi Levi? Reb Moshe says your shemayim should be machmir. So are you allowed to do this? So really, there's another svar to be mater. What do you want warm? Is it that you want the water in the water bottle to be warm, or do you want the bed to be warm? What is your focus on this action? Your focus on this action is keeping the bed warm. The reason why it's not so pashut is because you really, in a way, want the water to stay warm in order to make the bed warm. So it's not so pashut. But the basic kavanah is keep the bed warm. It's not keep you. Ba'atzim don't really care if the water in the water bottle is warm. So l'maisa, I think between the fact that it's a klisheni and there's another svara that your kavanah is really keeping the bed warm, not the water warm, so the chayra, it should be allowed. But it is what's the debate. Okay. Now, what about covering kugel or challah with silver foil and putting it on the plata, on the electric cooker? Is that a problem? No. So, Chazanish says, once again, as I said, every item gets one free wrapping. So you want to put silver foil over the challah, gesundheit, go for it. And l'maisa, most places can allow this, also because there's multiple kavanas. Why are you wrapping the challah with silver foil? What's the reason? Protect it from bugs. Keep the moisture in, that it doesn't dry out. There's multiple reasons. You don't want the crumbs to go everywhere. There's multiple reasons why you wrap up a challah. Or sometimes you just, because that's how you pulled it out of the freezer. So there's multiple reasons why you do it. As we said earlier, that when there's multiple reasons, then it's fine. And therefore, l'chayr, you should be allowed to. You should know that Moshe writes in Igros Moshe that it's issur to take a challah or kugel wrapped up in silver foil and put it on the blach or the plata because of Hatmana.
Even one layer?
Even one layer. Wow. Now, they say that Moshe's children, Rav David Feinstein says that Moshe would have never said this heter anymore. At that time, the chumrah, sorry, Moshe would never said that chumrah anymore. At that initial stage, when he wrote that tshuva in 1975, the wool of tinfoil at that point was a mechanism to keep heat in. That was what tinfoil was used. As time developed, tinfoil became, you wrap with tinfoil always, everything. No, what to do? I don't know, wrap it with tinfoil, flip it in the fridge. Wrap it with tinfoil, flip it in the freezer. You wrap it in tinfoil so it doesn't make a mess. Now that tinfoil became, as it says on the box, all-purpose. Yeah? Now that tinfoil became an all-purpose item, and it's not just a heat-keeping in item, the Ramosha wouldn't have said his chumrah, and nowadays it should be mutter to go and cover with tinfoil, even lefi shitas Rav Moshe. So that is what Rav David claims, and l'maisa it's mistaber because this chumrah of Rav Moshe is quite a chiddush. Okay, very good. Now, fine. By the way, what do you think about wrapping your kugel with 3 layers of tinfoil before putting it on the block? Problem. Why is it a problem?
Concept just for the dirt of the base.
Correct. So 1 layer of tinfoil is enough to deal with the crumbs and the dirt and all that. Why are you doing 3 layers? Because you want to really keep the heat in. That's a problem. Now, there's a little hack. Definitely if it's 3 separate pieces of foil, it's for sure a problem. There's a little hack if you take that long piece and you wrap it over 3 times. So I think like this. It depends what's going on and what's your mahalach hachayim. If you are generally a stingy aluminum foil fellow, and over here you're triple wrapping your aluminum foil, it's pashut as clear as day that you're doing it to keep in the heat, that's a problem. If you're wrapped it up 3 times because it's aluminum foil, like who cares? Like, I don't know, you just rip a big piece and you wrap it up. That's fine. If that, one thing that's totally on the mitzias of what's going on. And it depends your personal relationship to aluminum foil. That's what the shayla is dependent on. I think people writing this, writing that. I think it's an individual shayla. I don't think this can be answered for the masses. Yeah? Okay. Fine. Now, let's go weiter. So, according to Tosfos, there's no issur Hatmana on something which let me just put it this way. According to Tosfos, no issur Hatmana on something like a hot plate or a block. According to Tosfos, the whole issur Hatmana is that you might go and submerge the item into the pot and start messing around with it. But when you come to something like a plata or a blach, something flat, you cannot submerge it into the plata or the blach. There would be no issur Hatmana lefi shitas Tosfos. The Ma'isa, the Mishnah Berurah says we do not rely on this shita. However, ein limchois to somebody who does this. So if somebody goes and somebody's doing Hatmana on a plata, you don't have to make a big massive macha on it, because lefi shitas Tosfos, it's actually allowed. There'd be very on a shalom pot you could have issues. On the pots, anything that's on top of a pot you could have issues, but anything that's directly on the plata or the blach, you'll have no issues. Lefi shitas Tosfos. So I had a shayla. What if you go to your shul and you see somebody doing it on the public? That I think you still could be meicha, because as a public thing, we should go to a higher standard. But as an individual, if a guy wants to do this, the shviger, you can let the shviger do it. You don't have to get in the shviger's business. The shviger does it.
But even not according to Tosfos, if the whole chashash is chitui, the plata now doesn't have a dollar on it, so what's the concern? Why is it most heavy? What's the concern? I'm going to stop the fire.
So once again, when you get Gilan, you're such a parish. You're such a parish. You don't understand the taivas of. You don't understand what there's some people that are so into food. You get so carried away. I need to make it. Knock on my neighbor's door. Flip it in the oven. Turn on the oven. You eat hot food for Shabbos. You get your bowl. The Gemara says you can be bowling. You're gonna get carried away. You're gonna get wound up in it. You don't know what's gonna happen. Somebody like you spends half their day with Mesilas Yesharim. You know, you're not gonna be able to understand the pshat. You have to come down to our world of the belly type, and you understand. You get carried away in the food. You never know what's gonna happen. Okay, well, one day you have to. After it's like, I know where you're holding. The Rambam says you first go to this extreme, and you have to come back to the middle. So when you get back to the middle, you'll understand us. Okay, fine. Gishmak. Now, the Maisa, once again, as we said, you shouldn't rely on this, but we don't have to be meicha, somebody that does. Now, You see that they sell in like Ula and all these fancy, nice from stores. The plata cover, like a blanket. It's very fancy, very nice. It says on the big letters, "L'koved Shabbos Kodesh." So the shayla is, what is it supposed to say on the plata cover? Is it supposed to say "L'koved Shabbos Kodesh" or is it supposed to say "L'chil Shabbos Kodesh"? What is the correct girsa? So the covet. Okay, so let's first discuss. Let's break this up into a couple different cases. The first case that we're going to discuss is the yeki plata. The yeki plata is a plata that has 4 perfectly placed 9x13 aluminum pans, perfectly orderly on the plata. And now you take the plata cover and you stick it on top of the yeki plata, and it's flat, and the sides of the aluminum pans are still fully exposed. So you have the plata on the bottom, the plata cover on the top, and the sides of the 4 aluminum pans are completely exposed. So that, once again, the shita of the Tor and the shita of the Mechaber are that a mixas Hatmana is a problem. So for the Sfardim, this is going to be a problem. So for the Sfardim, they have to cross out the L'koved Shabbos Kodesh and write L'chil Shabbos Kodesh. For the Ashkenazim, this is fine, because as the Ramah says, if it's Megul Mala, if it's open on the top, and the placing it by a large, say it's lav dafka the top, it's also if it's open on the sides, that is not considered Hatmana. And therefore for the Ashkenazim, it's fine, you don't have to cross it out, it could still say the L'koved Shabbos Kodesh. Okay, now, the Chazon Ish, by the way, said we have to be machmir for the mechaber. So in Bnei Brak, also cross out the L'koved Shabbos Kodesh. In Bnei Brak, we have to write L'chil Shabbos Kodesh as well. Okay. Now, what if you have not a yeki plata, but you have a haimisha plata, like my plata? You have this pot is over here, that pot's there, this thing, and you have a kugel on the top that's like bulging out on the top. So let's think about it. We have the 9x13s there, and we have on top of it this kugel that's bulging up. Now that kugel, what happens?
What have you done with your kugel?
It's on top of, there was no room, and it's hanging, it's on the top, in the middle, on the top.
Is that in the middle on the top? Were you balancing on 2 things? What does it do?
Yeah.
Like at an angle, that's what you said.
You wore a talus before you were married, right? Enough said.
I'm trying to get the mid-sears of your kugel.
Yeah, so on top of the aluminum pans, you have other stuff flying there, not in an orderly fashion. Right? Okay, fine. So, and then the plata cover hangs on all sides of this kugel that's in the middle top of your stuff. Now that kugel is completely surrounded by covering. Right? That is a problem. So that plata cover is a big problem if you have stuff in the mix that are going to be completely covered. So this depends. Each man has to know their own plata. In my house, this would not work.
But these are easy to put something on top of them all and it will hang over the sides, you know?
Right, but the problem is sometimes if you have something in the middle which is bulging up and it's going to have the sides. I'm not saying you can't have an eitzah. If you're careful with this, and you can figure it out. But if you're not careful, and you might be careful the first 2 Shabbosim. Okay, fine.
This thing is marketed to literally just cover over the top of all the things on the...
Yeah, and it keeps it extra hot. And it looks nice.
And all the pictures on the front of this product will show all the pans being...
Yeah, I imagine if they had a picture, they would show the aforementioned Yeki Blach. I'm done the Makav Skos, at least they would do that in a picture. I assume so. But my Blach doesn't look like that. I don't think Elon's does either. Fine. So, weiter. Good. So, that's the plata blanket. Now, can one use a crock pot? Is a crock pot allowed? So once again, as we described, what is a crock pot? So we're talking about the classic ceramic pot that goes into the metal insert, right? With heating elements all around. So, simply speaking, as we said, that it's a machlokes between the Mechaber and the Ramah. According to the Mechaber, Hatmana b'mixas is a problem. According to the Ramah, as long as Megul Mala, it's okay. So, seemingly, Svardim, sorry guys, no crockpot for you. Ashkenazim, no problem. Ramah says Megul Mala, it's okay. Because, it has a cover. No, the actual pot is not part of the cheshbon. We're talking about surrounding around the pot. The cover is part of the pot. That's not part of the cheshbon. So l'chayra, a crockpot is allowed. For the chazanishniks, we're choishish for hatmana b'mixas. So the chazanishniks, b'nei brak, no crockpot for you. Svardim, no crockpot for you. Ashkenazim, gesundheit. That's really what comes out. So if we look at the psakim of whatever he passed, so Moshe, by the way, Moshe does say he had a crockpot, he used a crockpot. Rav Scheinberg says, no problem with the crockpot, I don't understand those that answer. The Shevet Levi says there's no problem with the crockpot, it's allowed. Now,
you're just talking for Hatmana.
That's next. So that's Rav Shlomo Zalman.
So, talking about Hatmana.
Hatmana, I'm not talking about other shows. Other shows are a different thing. Right now I'm talking about Hatmana. So Rav Shlomo Zalman. So this is famed as the final psak of Rav Shlomo Zalman. Rav Shlomo Zalman apparently Rav Shlomo Zalman came out with a tshuva where he assered the use of a crockpot. He definitively assered the use of a crockpot, and everybody wanted to ask him, Rav Shlomo Zalman, but the Ramah says Megul Mala is allowed. What's going on? What's the problem? And famously, Rav Shlomo Zalman was, right after he wrote this, he was rushed to the hospital. 2 weeks later, he was nifter, and he never got a chance to answer all the questions that everybody asked on him on how is he arguing on the Ramah. They say Rav Shlomo Zalman was nifter with the crockpot on his desk. They say Rav Shlomo Zalman, some people view this as his final will and testament. Like, crockpot is issur. This is what he had to say, and then he went to the El Mamas. Now, the question is, why in the world did Rav Shlomo Zalman ask for the crockpot? Surely it's Megul Mala, and if it's Megul Mala, it should be allowed. So some people want to suggest that Rav Shlomo Zalman was being machmer for the Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam says if it's roiv covered, it's a problem. So some people want to say he was being choishish for Shittas Rabbeinu Tam. Some people want to suggest that he was being choishish for the Pri Megadim. The Pri Megadim says that when the Ramah says Megul Mala, he doesn't just mean the top, he means the top and the upper part of the walls, whereas the crockpot covers the full walls. The problem, though, with saying that Rav Shlomo Zalman was choishish for the Rabbeinu Tam, or the Rav Shlomo Zalman was choishish for the Pri Megadim, is anybody that's familiar with Rav Shlomo Zalman's style of psak. He was not one that generally was choishish for the minority opinion. If the majority opinion and the Pashup Pshat was that it was allowed, the style of Rav Shlomo Zalman would usually be Tamater. So it's a little bit strange to say that he was choishish for the Rabbeinu Tam or the Pri Megadim. A different Pshat that I heard this from Rav Kalas, which I thought was intriguing. The ones who designed the crockpot, what was their intention in this design? What were they going for? They were going for the ultimate insulator, the ultimate thing that keeps this pot hot. Until then, the classic thing was fire on the bottom. What was their focus? Their focus was, let me get the best thing. And this is the design that they came up with for the ultimate Hatmana. If this is the design that they came up with for the ultimate Hatmana, how are you going to say that that's not Hatmana? So even though from a practical, yes, it's Megul Mala, and by the way, when they used to do with coals, you think they got a coal in every last little inch or whatever? No, when we say that it's completely covered, we mean you did your best job. Over here, they did their best job. And if they did their best job, perhaps that's why Rav Shlomo Zalman says, even though technically it's Megul Mala, it still would be issur. So, once again, Rav Elyashiv, by the way, just to add this, I know we're running out of time, Rav Elyashiv said that it is issur. He writes in his tshuva, he writes in a sefer that a crockpot is issur. However, there's something strange going on because there's multiple people that reported that they brought a crockpot to Rav Elyashiv and they showed him it was Megul Mala, and he said, "Oh, like that? That's allowed." So I don't know what exactly is going on with the Rav Yashiv, because what's written and the stories, and sometimes these stuff get funny. I don't know what to rely on, what to trust. Sarchin. The Maisa, the Eitzah that Rav Yashiv himself says, and the many say, is if you put in the bottom of the crock pot some rocks or some tinfoil balls to make it not completely flush in the crock pot, and now there's some ear space in between the pot and the rest of the hot parts. Therefore, it wouldn't be Hatmana, and that would be allowed. So once again, that's as well. But I'm talking about even right now within the Hatmana Shaila, there's an advantage in terms of that. And Rav Scheinberg also gives another svar why it should be mutter. He said it's an act of cooking, not an act of insulating. Now, this is a debatable svar whether we could say such a svar, but Rav Scheinberg says it's a slow cooker. It's a cooker, not an insulator. So tzarkin exactly on that. And I just want to point out for the Svardim, I wanted to know what Achinu B'nai Eidat HaMizrach, what they could do with a crock pot. Because the Chayra, you learn the sugya, they're toast. So I listened to a shiur from a Chacham, and the Chacham said that Svardim should only buy the type, which is the heating element and the heating thing on the bottom, where you stick the pot on top, not the classical crock pot. If you already bought and you already own one of those crock pots, then you could do the eitzah of putting the rocks or the silver foil on the bottom, and that's okay. I don't really understand why that would be allowed, because the chayra, even if it's not completely, it's for surely hatmana mixed in such a case. So tzarech Ian, why that would be allowed. In general, Americans use crock pots, and most Israelis do not use crock pots. And one last thing before we finish, putting a towel on top of the crock pot, that's for sure a problem to everybody, because now you just turned it. The whole heter for a crock pot is that it's megula l'mala. Once you put a towel on top of the crock pot because you want to keep the heat in, B'meila, that would be a problem. Thank you for listening, and we'll take it up here from next week. Shkach.